Good morning, everyone, again. Welcome to the cubesys discussion series. Today's topic is unlocking hidden value. So the 5 game-changing adaptive cloud capabilities that our wonderful speakers are going to be talking about. Before we do the introduction, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the Gadigal land, online and offline, on which we meet today, and pay our respects to our elders, past and present, and emerging. The discussion format today is going to be about lots of fireside chats between our speakers, which I'm going to be introducing in a second. Please feel free to use the chat window to ask your questions. You should be able to type your questions in the window. And if we can't answer your questions straight away, we'll get back to you with them. The video is obviously being recorded, and we'll be able to share the video and the presentation slides with you after the event, so you'll have everything with you. So joining us today is Dean Corcoran. Dean is the Technology Strategy and Chief Technology Officer for all the partners of Microsoft. Thanks, Dean, for joining today. We've got Shabaz Darr, who is a Senior Cloud Consultant here at cubesys, and also a Microsoft MVP, which we have been very happy for us to join very recently at cubesys. And we've got Christine Brown, our projects delivery lead, projects delivery manager here at cubesys as well, who looks after a lot of operational work and a lot of operational stuff when it comes to our customers. So we'll have Christine contribute to that conversation as well. To give you guys a background, cubesys has been running the discussion series on Azure Arc for a few months now. And as part of that series, we've gone through a few important topics. The first one of the year was Mastering Adaptive Cloud, how Azure Arc simplifies the hybrid management. So that was an introduction to this conversation. We then went into cost optimization in adaptive cloud. So we spoke a little bit about FinOps there. We then talked about smarter IT for not-for-profits. That was a not-for-profit focused session. And this is the final one. We also have a whole series running on AVD, so Azure Virtual Desktop for Microsoft. So that whole series is also concurrently running. You can find all those videos to catch up on our YouTube channel. With this, I might hand over to Shabaz to start the topic of today. Thank you, Shabaz.
Thanks, I appreciate the introduction. So welcome, everybody. As we have with the sort of adaptive cloud series, just want to do a quick recap on what we did in the last panel discussion, because obviously it's relevant to what we're going to talk about in this final one today. So in the last discussion, we were fortunate to have Phil Barlow, who's Director of Specialist Sales in Asia at Microsoft, and we also had cubesys' very own Business Development Lead, Kanthan Siva. And the focus of the discussion was on how Azure Arc is helping not-for-profit NFPs with the adaptive cloud challenges. So we discussed some of those challenges, and we looked a bit deeper into some of them, including the complexities of management and limited IT resources for NFPs. And we sort of kind of finished that discussion, and we summarized by talking about some specific use cases, which were very interesting. And a lot of some of those were around how COVID-19 has actually accelerated NFP's journey into the cloud, with some deciding on sort of a cloud-first approach. So as Asa mentioned, we've discussed a lot of different. We've discussed cost optimizations, we've discussed NFPs and challenges there. So that brings us around to our today's topic. So we're going to go through 5 what we feel are 5 game-changing capabilities that can unlock adaptive cloud for users and organizations. So the first one I really want to bring to the forefront is this concept of hybrid and multi-cloud management. So as we've made clear in our other panel sessions, Azure Arc is the tool or the solution we've kind of chosen for this adaptive cloud problem. And Azure Arc is going to let you sort of project on-premises and multi-cloud and sort of edge resources into your Azure Resource Manager. This means you're able to manage Windows and Linux servers, Kubernetes clusters, and SQL servers running anywhere as if they were native to Azure. So why is it game changing? And I feel it's game changing because it gives you a single pane of glass, and that's going to be quite a common theme throughout. That's sort of our 5 game changes today. And that lets you manage that sort of disparate sort of environment, and it reduces the complexities and improving consistency. At this point, I'm just going to bring in Christine, or Chrissy as we call her, Chrissy, who's project delivery lead at cubesys. Chrissy, I know you've got a lot of experience working with cubesys clients and who are kind of multi-cloud on premises and using edge resources. What are your experiences with those clients working and who have these hybrid multi-cloud managements, and how Azure Arc and those sort of Azure features have been able to help them as an organization?
Thanks, Shabaz. Hello, everyone. So it's a really good question. As a cloud service provider, we have customers come to us that are at all different stages of their cloud virtualization and digitalization journey. And depending on where they're at with that is where Azure Arc has its capabilities and it fits. So in a lot of our situations, we have customers who have come to us because they're interested in moving to Azure for reasons such as cost optimization and wanting to get off-prem because of costs with VMware and Citrix, etc. But then you add this additional platform where you've got Azure Cloud and you've still got on-prem, or you might have AWS, GCP, and then you've got your resources in-house that are then having to work across different platforms, different consoles. So by introducing Azure Arc to those customers, it really helps those customers with their journey to Azure, because it allows them to have that single pane of glass, as you said, Shabaz, where they can bring in all of the servers into Azure, into the one portal, and be able to view information about those servers and resources. So then they can make the decision then whether they want to just use it for monitoring and alerting, or whether they want to enhance those capabilities across all of their different platforms.
Thanks, Chrissy. Really good insight there. Dean, I just want to bring you in if you don't mind. I know we've had a couple of chats around this. You've got some really interesting insights to it as well. So this sort of hybrid, this capability that Azure Arc can unlock for hybrid and multi-cloud management. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, Shabaz, Christy, look, I try to think of it from the perspective of where technology adds value in organizations in them achieving their missions, right? Regardless of whether you're not-for-profit or commercial, or what you're setting out to achieve. IT, like technology department, is there to provide a set of tools for organizations to be able to achieve more. And what we're seeing as time goes on, especially in this era of AI that we're in, we're seeing a more diverse array of technologies needing to sit within the scope of management that the technology department and IT needs to sort of keep the reins on, I suppose, keep control of, right? And increasingly within organizations, people don't see technology as something that sits within IT. They see technology as something that's just a tool for them. And so why should IT be involved? But if anything, now is a time where IT needs to have the most possible involvement. So if you're not working to unify and simplify the way that you're managing your infrastructure, you're really hindering your ability to serve the organization that you actually work for. And you lose sight of all those edge cases that put you in face of senior management in your organization for the wrong reasons, if that makes sense. So I don't like to turn up with sticks, but if you haven't got a handle on the fundamental, the infrastructure at the base level, and you're not looking at the connection between the base level infrastructure and what value it provides to the business, then you're sort of already lost there to begin with. But what you really need to do is start to raise the bar on looking at how you can simplify things and start to look at everything from a simple place. And so that's where I've always seen Arc as, when, as Arc has evolved, it's quite a mature technology now. It's free, as far as the base service itself, right? The only thing that sort of costs money with Arc is the different destinations it takes you down, right? It's the extra great things you can do that, of course, that add extra costs if you look at it from that point of view. But as far as the costs that you have today operationally that you could be spending on better things, quite often it is actually just wrangling your infrastructure. And the reality is, if you're talking to the business about what the business wants to do, you want to go there with an unencumbered point of view. You don't want to turn up thinking, well, I'm not going to do that because that's not my on-premises world, or I'm not going to do that because that's in cloud and I don't like doing cloud, or I'm not going to do that because it's on-premise, that requires on-premises or edge, and I only want to do cloud. You need to be thinking of cloud more broadly as providing a discretionary level of opacity to the business as to how much technology they need to be exposed to, or how much technical they need to get exposed to, so that you can offer the right level of capability. And so that's sort of how I see it. This is a value add. If you're not unifying with tools like Arc, then you're missing out a trick.
Yeah, well said. And I agree as well. When we talk about these three different areas: on premises, multi-cloud, edge resources, very easy to get siloed. And what Azure Arc is allowing you to do is get rid of those boundaries. And especially organizations might have some legacy debt on premises and things like that. It allows you to make decisions not based on technology, but based on how the benefits it's going to bring to the organization, which is obviously the most important thing. Okay, so at number 2, so these are in no order, sorry, but this is the second sort of game-changing capability. We have Azure policy and governance everywhere. So with Azure Arc, you're able to apply Azure policy, role-based access control, and sort of compliance standards to resources outside of Azure. So why is this game-changing? So in my opinion, you get, again, let's talk about centralized, that single pane of glass, centralized. There's a theme to the ones we've chosen, that we've kind of gone with. You get a centralized governance over those distributed assets. Again, whether they're in a different cloud, on premises, or at the edge. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with having that single policy across the entire sort of estate. I think that's where Azure Arc can really help, because it doesn't matter where your resources are hosted. As an organization, you always have a single policy, an organizational policy, you have a security policy, and that's the same across the board through multiple departments. And that shouldn't be any different for your resources, your IT infrastructure. Just because it's, like I said, located in a different area, a different cloud on premises, doesn't mean the policy changes. So with Azure Arc, it's unlocking that for organizations, which is why I think this is very, very much a game-changing capability. Dean, just want to bring you in first on this and understand your thoughts around that sort of governance everywhere capability.
Look, in line with what I was sort of saying before, governance is probably one of the top topics I'm seeing across technology today. Broadly speaking, again, when I look at, I spend a lot of time working with organizations deploying AI systems, and governance of AI and governance of your data is top of mind. And when we see some of the security and privacy breaches that we've seen, you hardly see another week in the newspaper and you can't find something where there's been an information leak or something like that. And look, this, if you're not, if you haven't sort of got a way to look at all the organization's critical data and infrastructure in a single place, then you don't have a sort of a virtual mission control that you're sitting at where you can see every part. And look, Azure policy and governance is pretty damn good already. Like when it comes to the value of just switching stuff on in the cloud, if you switch something on within Azure, any service, whether it be a virtual machine, right up to an Azure OpenAI, or some other large language model, Cohere or something, or Mistral or DeepSeek or whatever, or it could be just a Kubernetes service, all of that stuff, Microsoft's gone ad nauseum to lengths to allow you to have really, really fine granular monitoring capability. And that monitoring capability of how the health of the service runs right down to, what it connects to and where network traffic's going, all of that information effectively creates an emergent ability for Microsoft to provide customers with tools that provide great policy and governance tooling on top of that. And so that's just built in. A lot of that is built into Azure. The cool thing about Arc is it starts to bring all of that you'd normally have to build on premises or pay another vendor for. It starts to just bring that into your on premises or even into other vendors' clouds. And so it really makes life a lot easier because you're now not doing this transposition between different tooling where you've got governance tooling for this database or this product over here and data and security and governance tooling and things that people have had to build themselves over there. It helps you to really consolidate that.
The thing I love about this specific capability is if I go back to my sort of days before cloud, my when I was first starting IT, you used to do a lot of assessments and health checks for organizations on their on-premises organizations. You'd have to do that every 3 years or so because they'd get back to those bad habits that they'd got into. And once you've upscaled the estate, they'd get back to that after 3 years because there was no way of sort of automating that. What I love about Azure policy, and obviously Azure Arc unlocks that, is and we do a lot of assessments again for cloud customers at cubesys. Once we do that assessment, we don't have to go back again because we can implement Azure policy to make sure that when organization IT teams are deploying services, they're deploying to the same standard that we have left with our assessment and with our sort of upskilling the estate. So things like no public IPs, NSGs, making sure they're implemented. And Azure policy allows you to get that continuous sort of governance across your estate rather than getting back into the same habits another 3 years later. You have to do the same exercise. So that's one thing I really like about the Azure policy specifically. Okay, so we're at number 3 now. So Azure Arc enabled data services lets you run things like Azure SQL instances, SQL managed instances, PostgreSQL, hyperscale on your own infrastructure with Azure as your control panel. So you've got all the different data services from Azure that can again be unlocked via Azure Arc. So why is this game changing? Because for me, it brings, and one of the beauties of cloud are the PaaS services. So it brings PaaS services and capabilities like, and I'm going to bring you in a minute, Chrissy, around this, is around the automated patching, scaling, and also backups to the environment where a direct sort of cloud deployment isn't as feasible due to maybe latency or compliance or sort of data residency requirements. So again, Chrissy, we've had a chat around this earlier, and I know you've got some interesting insights around how Azure Arc is unlocking sort of the patching and backups for our clients at cubesys.
Yes, that's right. So we've had customers in the past that have come to us where they are moving to modern management, looking at implementing Intune and wanting to get away from more traditional SCCM for Azure updates. And by implementing Azure Arc into those on-prem servers or other servers, they've been able to adopt Azure Update Manager for those servers. So for those customers, it's just helped them to progress on that journey towards modern management with the assurity that they've got that Azure Update Manager functionality on offer. Yeah. And just going back to something Dean said as just before as well, I think executives and managers in the IT infrastructure space, they are able to benefit from Azure Arc, from that single pane of glass, because they know that, or they have that assurity that they've got the Azure policies and the management capabilities that you can incorporate with Azure Arc across all of your virtual machines, your resources. So then you are able to provide to your business that assurity that you've got that covered across everything. And I think that feeds into our next slide, I think, as well, which is more in relation to security. and ensuring that you've got the same level of security across all of your platforms by being able to see it in that single pane of glass and going into Azure portal to be able to see all of your servers and where they're sitting in that that spectrum of security and application of policies.
Percent. One thing I'm again just with we're at the third capability at the moment. One thing I'm seeing a bit of a theme again is that constant same tooling, and that's what that's what Azure Arc is unlocking. You know, when you have such a large estate in different areas, in different locations, multi-cloud on premises, it's very easy to have multiple tools to do all the different management tasks. How powerful a capability is that, Dean, where you can have a single tool rather than having multiple tools, and especially from a management capability for IT teams, especially that most of the time are over provisioned as it is. You know, they've got so many things, firefighting, all that sort of stuff. How powerful a capability is that tooling?
Yeah, look, I think the key word here in this particular instance is data. Like being able to do, we've always been able to set up scripts and things to deploy broadly, automate deploying different services. Microsoft was pretty, I suppose, getting a bit philosophical about it. Why did Microsoft choose data services as one of the early, since Arc was first released, data services was one of the first things. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about it from the perspective of, where is the value of the business? The value of the business is in the data the business is handling. So where does governance going to sort of start there? So follow that. So being able to deploy data to where it's needed within an organization is really important. So of course, to me, it's in line with what the value of technology is to an organization. We sort of work down the stack, and don't just think about it as sort of deploying. Okay, we're going to spin up a SQL instance over here or a Postgres instance over there. You can think about that from a technical IT person point of view of just that service, but thinking about what's inside that is the important business information that needs to be at the location that's important to the business. And so being able to have, again, we keep saying single pane of glass or that unified view, being able to both govern and deploy updates and new services where they need for the business in with a very responsive cadence is really, really important. And so that's why that's so mature at this point. And then, of course, going on and monitoring that, getting back to that governance stuff.
Which is a very nice segue into our next fourth game-changing. It's almost like you knew what was coming next, Dean. Game-changing capability.
Like I know you guys or something.
We've done this before. So unified DevOps and automation. So Azure Arc enabled servers and services can integrate with things like Azure Monitor, Azure Automation, and I know, Dean, you mentioned scripting earlier. Azure Log Analytics and Azure Update Management, as Chrissy mentioned earlier as well. This is going to allow IT teams to streamline operations and monitoring. So why is this game changing? It's allowing DevOps consistency across your entire IT landscape. This is going to make it easier for you to standardize, your CI/CD updates and sort of your incident response as well. And again, we talk about a single tooling, to manage all these different areas, and I've used the phrase anywhere a lot in this conversation already. Being able to do it from anywhere on any sort of estate, regardless of where it's hosted. Again, this is very, very much game changing and a very, very powerful capability. Again, Dean, you were just talking about Azure Monitor and things like that, and scripting. Being able to have that kind of repeatable sort of activity and scripting, again, across no matter where it is hosted, is very, very powerful. And again, it's saving IT teams time because they're already over provisioned as it is, as we've mentioned. What's your kind of take on this?
You get a few themes from me. Look, it's about elevation, really. Again, we can all. I'm sure these days in the era of AI, I can quickly build a script using some AI these days to do what I want to do. But make no mistake, that's not a very sustainable way of doing things. But by being able to hook this into established delivery and management automation tools, so into your DevOps tooling, that unified DevOps tooling means that you're actually not just automating something, you're actually pulling it into your delivery and update and process governance that IT is going to be running at. And so everything's transparent. It can run through robust decision frameworks that if things do go wrong, you have a path back as well, right? But naturally, at scale, it means that everyone can see what's going on within the organization, and the technology organization cannot worry about what's running under the hood and start focusing on what's important to the business and sit in the driver's seat.
Yeah, 100% fully agree with that. Well, something just popped into my mind actually. I did a demo for Azure Arc for a client about 3 weeks ago, and as part of the demo, I kind of showed the capabilities when you're onboarding an AWS VM, for example. And I was just going and showing them what kind of Azure Arc can unlock, and I showed them there was a tab for showing you what's installed on the VM, basically inventory. That was it. And they were shocked at the amount of information that was available. And they're like, "Oh, we've struggled to get inventory of our virtual machines and our servers in AWS." And this was a massive list of 100 different applications, services, and everything like that. And they were quite shocked at the amount of data they were actually getting from things like Azure Monitor and Log Analytics. So yeah, just a bit of a real life example of something that popped into my head there around that.
I actually had a quick question. Maybe Dean would be able to answer it, or you, Shabaz. So when it comes to unified automation, are there any specific improvements or like an incident response report that we can expect when it comes to this whole operational efficiency keyword?
So I think when it comes to sort of incident response, Azure Arc's going to sort of unlock capabilities like Microsoft Defender for Cloud and sort of that security element. So
like a specific improvement, like a special sort of thing that you see on a regular basis.
I think one of the big things for me is the automated remediation that you get out of Microsoft, and that's very powerful because again, when you work in a SOC, for example, you talked about security operations and incident response. The time in which you respond to a security incident is key. Too long, and you're in big trouble. So I think Azure Arc is able to unlock some of the capabilities in Microsoft around Microsoft Cloud, around automated responses. So if a certain incident happens, it triggers an automated response, like it'll lock an account or it'll block access or whatever. So the automated response piece for me is very, very powerful, and that's something that I think really is a bit of a game changer. Dean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, Azure has quite a comprehensive event framework built into it without mentioning product names or anything like that. And so, yeah, this sort of extends that into on-prem. So exactly what you're referring to, if you have a service management tooling, if that's sort of what's being referred a little bit, it would naturally click into that anyway. So with using Microsoft product or third party like something like ServiceNow, whichever, then naturally you want to meet that at the level where those tools are. If you're using best-in-class service management today, this should make it easier, if anything, because in many respects you're not having to then install separate agent capabilities. You just have an Azure. You just use the Azure agent for the third-party tooling, or first-party for that matter.
So good.
Yeah, so I don't know if that. I don't want to get too technical on that, but yes.
So we're going to move on to our by all means not least sort of game-changing capability. And for me personally, I feel like this is the most important. I'm very security conscious in general, and I think security and threat detection. And I've called out Microsoft Defender for Cloud. That's what MDFC. I couldn't fit in the full name in my slide, so I'm calling out Microsoft Defender for Cloud specifically. So with Azure Arc, you can onboard non-Azure servers and Kubernetes clusters into Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and this is going to allow you to extend threat protection, vulnerability assessments, and sort of security posture management across your entire environment. So why? I mean, again, it's kind of self-explanatory, but why is this game changing? Because you get that unified security visibility. I said single pane of glass in a different way there, so I didn't use single pane of glass. So you get that visibility across hybrid multi-cloud resources without needing to separate your sort of tools for each environment. And I kind of touched on one tool, like a single tool. I'll make a Lord of the Rings reference, one tool to rule them all for you Lord of the Ring buffs. Chrissy, I'd like to bring you in at this point just to kind of talk about how again, working closely with the sort of cubesys clients that you do, and your thoughts around this being a sort of real game changer that Azure Arc can unlock.
Yeah, it feeds in from what I said previously, which is that for managers and the infrastructure team to be able to know that they have got MDFC across all of their servers, regardless of where they are, it gives them that assurity. And so you've also got the monitoring, you've got the logs that you can look at, and you've got the reporting that you can go in and have a look at and see where is everything up to, what is my status. And by being able to do that in that single portal for all of your servers, I think it gives the security team and the management of that whole IT environment comfort to know that they've got one place they can go to see where everything's what the health is of everything in terms of security.
Yeah, 100%. And specifically talking about Defender for Cloud, it's not again just about the response for me. It's about it's constantly telling you about your posture. So your posture of your on-premises servers, your posture of your AWS servers, your edge resources. It's telling you, again, that posture is going to change as well. It's going to fluctuate. Sometimes you'll see there's things good about it, something that's bad. And again, it also integrates. We go back to the second slide around Azure policy, creating that repeatable, making sure that, if you do configure some security on implement NSGs or something like that, that you've got the Azure policy in place to integrate with your Defender for Cloud. So by automates, making sure that you are always installing NS or configuring NSGs with your virtual machines and things like that. So it's more than just the sort of reporting and that. It's very much about maintaining that posture across that estate, again, not just Azure, but and that can be very difficult, especially when you have such a large environment, a large estate. We're talking about 3 different locations here. We're talking about Azure, potentially AWS or GCP, and on premises. And that for me can be very, very powerful. Again, Dean, with this being our last one, I'd just like to bring you in to your thoughts on that sort of security and threat detection that Azure Arc can unlock.
Yeah, I suppose we're sort of, in some ways, starting with some of the things I said at the beginning. Security is something that needs to be sort of everywhere all at once. Everything, everywhere, all at once. In reference to that TV show, whichever. But and so you need to simplify security in order for it to be effective. It needs to be simple for the people, for the end users. It needs to be simple for the technology people as well. And it makes perfect sense that Arc is also that mechanism by which we extend security, that you have that one configuration plane for the cloud into on-premises and other data centers. And so Microsoft's got a pretty comprehensive security portfolio. If Microsoft was a single security vendor, there's more money spent on research and development security than any other organization on the planet for cyber. And so all of that provides a benefit to all size organizations if you're able to not just run that within Microsoft's products, but run that within other vendors' locations or in your own data centers or on premises or edge environments. And so by having that threat detection and security awareness everywhere, it actually raises the bar entirely. Because when you think about security from a compromise point of view, compromises sort of spread like diseases, in that it'll find a weak spot somewhere to get in, and then it will try to take over more locations. And so think of the security and threat detection, emphasis there on the threat detection capability. If you can't detect it, then you can't prevent it either. And so by having that unified telemetry that we can run the advanced threat detection algorithms across all different locations. It means that if something happens for you in one of your, I'm just going to push the boundaries a little bit, but maybe for some of this audience, but if you've got an office on the other side of the planet and it's subjected to some sort of a threat there, then this side of the planet here back in Australia, you get the benefit from that threat detection over there instantly here, regardless of that physical location. So you'd need to be sort of looking at that quite broadly as part of the way you just operate. At Microsoft, we've got a pretty strong mantra around security and privacy, in that we've got to think about it from everything needs to be secure by default. And we need to operate in a secure manner as well. And so security is that number one priority beyond anything else. If we're going to do something that isn't secure, then we're not allowed to do it. It's as simple as that, even if it sort of affects us financially to not to do it in an unsecure way, if that makes sense. So, but I suppose I'll sort of leave it at that. Like I come from a security background where you've really got to be pragmatic about security and get the right balance. If you push security too far, you actually decrease your security, believe it or not. And this generally makes things a lot easier.
I 100% agree with what you just said there around that balance for security. It's probably the hardest thing that organizations have to kind of get right.
Well, I think if you're managing multiple security tools too, it's hard to know what the balance is across all different systems. But again, security shouldn't be a product. It should be a sort of a way of being. But it is product. To be fair, it's productized, and you have security comes at expense, but that expense, like I've got this framing for security. Security is about providing road rules so you can drive faster, right? If you've ever been in a country where the road rules are sort of an optional thing, generally things move slower overall. Right, you've probably seen those sort of trope videos of everyone beeping at intersections and everything, right? But if you could actually slow things down and maybe put some traffic lights in, traffic moves quicker. As much as those things are annoying, that they're an efficiency mechanism.
Such a great analogy.
The way security works. Yeah.
It's a great analogy. I had a question actually to all of you. Any of the cubesys customer stories or examples that fit this topic that we can bring up?
I think there's a use case that we
probably about what you're allowed to share, right?
That's right. Yeah, so not digging deep, but and anything that we'd like to share. We don't have to name the customer.
I'm trying to think of a use case.
I think in the past, with all of our customers where we've been working with them on Azure migrations, particularly, we have been able to help them with that Microsoft Defender for Cloud for servers that are not being migrated. And for those organizations, it's really valuable because the teams that are going to have to manage those servers in future, if they've got one single source of truth, I suppose, in some ways, which is Azure Microsoft's Defender for Cloud, that's doing that security threat detection across all of their servers, whether they've been migrated or not, then it gives them that management capability, and it helps the teams that are having to look after the servers to have that single place to do that work, rather than having to do it through 2 different portals or multiple different tools.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Thank you. Good question again. So that's actually the sort of final. I want to kind of summarize. This is the fourth and final panel discussion on Azure Arc. So I think it's pertinent just to do a bit of a summary around the message we're trying to get across here. And it's around that adaptive cloud, and hopefully by these 4 panel discussions, you're able to understand what adaptive cloud is, the challenges that are out there for organizations, but also the sort of a way of unlocking that problem and those challenges. And again, cubesys, we've used this, again, this is due to our experience working with clients. We've used Azure Arc as our sort of solution that we feel can really help customers and organizations with that sort of adaptive cloud challenge. And the theme I've tried to use throughout the panel discussions is that Azure Arc is like a bridge, essentially. It's bridging those Azure services that we all, that we've all used daily, to your sort of dispersed sort of estate. So with that being said as well, we still have a limited time offer around Azure Arc cubesys. So essentially, as part of the offer, we'll onboard 50 servers, your first 50 servers. We'll do a bit of an introduction to a dashboard as well, and give you a bit of an overview of Azure Arc. So that's free. So if you are interested in that, please reach out to either myself, Asta, or Chris, or anyone who you might know the cubesys team.
Super exciting, and the timeline for this is the end of June. So you've got the financial year to get to us. Yes.
Excellent. And I think in the chat you have put the sort of calls, the sort of panel discussions that we have coming up as well. So I think we've got a couple coming up on AVD, specifically AVD series is kind of got started a few weeks ago. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining. I want to thank Chrissy. This is your first panel discussion, so thank you very much for joining us. And Dean, as always, thank you for supporting cubesys from Microsoft. So thank you very much, and thank you to everybody else for joining us as well.
And if any of our audience have any questions that you weren't able to ask, please feel free to drop it in the chat, actually. But we will be sharing the recording as well as the presentation with you shortly. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.